Hey everyone, and welcome back to Just Tucking Around. Today I'm joined by Samuel Aaron. He is a musical artist, and his new EP, All I Am Is All I Hear, was just released, like a month ago?
Yeah, just about.
And I'm so happy to have him on. We've been Twitter mutuals for a while, and yeah, um, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, like where you're from and your name and all that.
Yeah. I'm Samuel Aaron. My friends call me Sam. I am from Portland, Oregon originally, and I'm now based out of Chicago. I've been making music for a while, and just dropped my first EP. Written, recorded, produced almost entirely from this bedroom I'm in right now, which seems to be the way of 2020, 2021, as far as we
Yep,
know. So, happy to be on the show, and thanks for having me, man.
of course. And so when did you like first start making music?
So I've really, I mean, it's the corny thing to say, but I've really been singing and making music in some capacity for as long as I can remember.
Hmm.
I have always been really musical, and I think a lot of that's uh, I owe credit to my parents who raised me with a lot of music around the house. A lot of classic stuff, like raised on the Beatles primarily, but a lot of Bob Marley, Stevie Wonder, and I would always just like sit by the speakers and sing along, and I had a little guitar with like three strings or something, and just strum along. So I've been playing music for a while, and then started to get really serious about it when I was like 12 or 13. I was playing gigs here and there, busking like on the street,
Hmm.
and just really getting into it. And then yeah, it's just sort of gone from there. Started writing a couple years after that. Got into production a couple years after that when I was 17 or 18. And then a couple years later, here we are.
Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome. And like over the past like few months I've been seeing you doing like covers and stuff on Twitter. And
Yeah.
looks like you could play the guitar pretty well. What instruments do you play and when did you start playing them and how did that all come to be?
Yeah. So I was like putting piano lessons as a younger kid,
Hmm.
which like again, it's just like I my gratitude for my parents and like it's not like they ever really pushed music on me, but just like having a piano in the house and having instruments around, like my parents are pretty casual musicians, but
Hmm.
just like having instruments around the house is pretty key. So I was like putting piano lessons, kind of hated them. And then like one year my mom got a ukulele for her birthday,
Hmm.
and she was like playing it, and I think I like stole it from her and like ran up to my room and was like, I'm gonna learn a ton of songs, and came back down and was like obsessed and like got my own, and then that turned into guitar, which turned into bass. And then like in high school I picked back up piano. I was singing in choir and like wanted to be able to play the parts out, and so
Hmm.
got back into piano, which is now I think probably my main instrument. Like I play keys a lot. I have
Hmm.
my keyboard right here underneath
That's awesome.
my camera. And so during online classes or during like literally anything, I'm just here just jamming out on keys. So those are my main, like guitar, bass, keys. I still have like a ukulele on my wall that should probably get more love than it does. And then singing's probably been the main thing all along.
That's awesome. So you said you were originally from Oregon, right?
Yeah.
And then did you move to Chicago for school or like how did that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm here for school. I'm currently transferring, but I'm like in the process of thinking about pursuing music a little more seriously. So
Right.
I wasn't going to school for music, but now I'm in the process of.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. So,
Yeah.
has music always been like the career path you saw for yourself, or is this something that
No,
has
not at
come
all.
into like mind recently?
Yeah, it's sort of a combination of the two. I think
Hmm.
um there's just a lot of pressure on young people to know what they want to do, and there's also a
Exactly.
lot of pressure for that to not be art.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's
No,
not
seriously.
it's not a very viable thing. And I think it requires a lot of sacrifice and a lot of drive, and just like a lot of wherewithal to get through the parts where it's like, most
Yeah.
jobs you don't have to worry about writer's block, or
Right.
you don't have to
Exactly.
worry about just like lacking a creative
There's always
energy.
some sort of task in some other things,
Hmm.
but then when it comes to like expressing yourself creatively, it's like you got to find that from within. So, like, you may not always have like the most clear direction at every single moment until
Exactly.
that moment hits.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if I were to pursue something, I mean, which at any point I've really never known what that would be besides music.
Right.
But I think up until recently, I was having a hard time acknowledging that it was gonna be music.
Hmm.
And so, but yeah, I mean, I definitely get tripped up about like, if I'm working a desk job, how I'm feeling or how my relationships or friendships are, like they're not gonna affect that. But those things will totally affect my music and they'll totally affect my productivity in that realm. It's
Exactly.
like,
Yes.
like what I'm writing songs about changes my whole mood. And so that's definitely like a beautiful part about being a musician, and also definitely a scary part because it's so unpredictable.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of adults, when they hear someone say like they want to pursue like the arts in some way or music or something creative like YouTube or podcasting or whatever that may be, it's always like it's either like two things. It's always the be realistic, like this probably
Right.
won't work out for you, which is just like crushing to anyone who wants to do something like
Absolutely.
that. Like, or they give you the, well, why don't you also have a plan A and a plan B and make this like your plan A, but also be working on plan B more than your plan A, which makes no sense if you really
Right.
want that to be.
Right. And so I'm thinking about that sort of thing. I mean, I have a lot of musician buddies who are, they get a real estate license on the side. One of my friends
Hmm.
is thinking about doing, or they're working their day job just so that they can provide for their music. And it's like
Exactly.
until the music thing pays rent, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And so I'm thinking about that actively, and hopefully eventually, even if it's not the music itself or my music itself that's going to pay to sustain myself, then hopefully it can be something in music. Hopefully I can be writing songs or producing for other people.
Yeah, and I just think that especially like at our age, like just taking that leap of faith on yourself and like just taking that risk is like so important and something that a lot of people are like afraid to do and like
I
just
think so
like,
too, man.
and it's just like it's so like depressing to know that like there's so many like young creatives who are literally just like kind of put into a box almost, or like told that like this isn't something that they should pursue just because
Absolutely.
the odds like aren't in their favor. But the fact that everyone thinks that, if you just believe that you can, I feel like that puts you like above everyone else anyways, just because like if you're actively pursuing that for your career, like what's stopping you, like because there's
Right.
so many other people who are literally just trying to get started, and like you already having an EPO that already puts you like a level like above and like closer to your like what your goal is for your career anyways.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean,
Hmm.
I'd sort of like to think so. I think a lot about. I don't even remember where I heard it, but I when I was younger, I remember I used to be like really into space and astronauts as
Hmm.
everyone was, and um, I remember hearing someone like an astronaut who was like, like if everyone wants to be an astronaut when they're little, and then by the time everyone's 15, they all think it's unrealistic. Like, if I just don't think it's unrealistic, like maybe I get to be that one person.
Exactly.
Like
Yes,
maybe it
exactly.
works out if like I'm the only person who doesn't give up on that. And so yeah, I sort of hope that through some combination of just like persistence and just I don't know, being really obsessed with what I do,
Exactly.
I'm hoping it can work out. But who knows?
Yeah.
It's early. I don't know my heart set on any particular direction.
So another question I have here is how long did it take you to make this new EP? Like, what was the process like what's the story behind everything that went into this project?
Yeah. So this project was sort of a culmination of a lot of things. Back in like September of 2019, I started getting really into producing music,
Hmm.
and sort of just like figuring out what my sound was. I was making music out of my college dorm room, which was like limiting in many ways, but also really sparked some beautiful like just ideas, and the limitation I think definitely led to some cool things. But
Hmm.
then, as many of us were, I was sent home in March at the start of the pandemic, and found myself back in my childhood bedroom, which was like a really trippy thing creatively to be
Right.
back with amongst like all these feelings that I had left behind, and all this like just family and old friends, and just being back in your hometown after it's like you leave it all behind, and then you go back to an empty bedroom of all the things that you chose to leave behind.
Hmm.
And so I started this project from there. And that's what that first song, Restart, is sort of about. It's sort of like physically and emotionally just feeling like I have to start from scratch. And so that was the first track I made for the EP. It was definitely the first track I finished. I think I might have had By the Way going on at the same time, which is that second track. But
Hmm.
Restart was sort of like me feeling like I was feeling solid on a sort of sound, um, sort of committing to like, this is going to be a sort of project. Um, and yeah, so I mean, you go back and listen to that song, and some of those lyrics are sort of about, yeah, like I'm starting from scratch. Got to figure out like where I'm at, figuring out what this means to be making music in, you know, in a pandemic in 2020, which is, you know, obviously everyone's figuring out what everything means. But
Right.
yeah, so that was the start. That was probably back in like March or April of 2020. And then slowly but surely, the rest of the tunes came into play. So I released the EP Christmas Eve of 2020. And yeah, so the funny thing is like the last song I made is track 3, Been Through.
Mhm.
And I started that like in the month of December. So that was definitely the one that got done last. It was sort of like the final piece that I felt like I was ready to release it with.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure if this was going to be like a double single or an EP or an album, and I ended up wanting to go like the quality over quantity route.
Exactly. So did you have tracks that like you threw away and didn't make this, or do you pretty
Yeah,
much put out whatever you make?
yeah. I had like, I'm actually looking up at my little bulletin board.
Mhm.
I had like 7 songs that I was felt really good about, but there were about 14 or 15 songs that were in some stage of completion that I thought at some point were going to be on this project. And I mean, honestly, like they may be on future projects
Right.
in some form, but also they may just be ideas that vanish, or ideas that you know, lead to other ideas that I can do something stronger with.
Mhm.
There's a couple songs that I created for this that just like didn't feel fully baked, and I definitely
Mhm.
wanted to just like give them the time and space. So I'm glad I went with the EP, the 5
Yeah.
track EP. I think it was probably a good intro. Also, like as my first time dropping something, I don't know. It's like no one knows who I am yet. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
it would be. I mean, I would be honored if someone would want to sit down and listen to a 12 track album, but like if you don't know who I am and I'm like reaching out and I'm like, hey, you should check out my music, the odds that you're gonna
You're
sit
giving
through
them like
5
a sample
songs,
pretty much, right? Yeah, like
right? And the odds that someone wants to listen to like 15 minutes of material versus an hour or 45 minutes is, so I'm really happy with what I did. And some of those songs will come out in some way. There's a couple songs that are that missed the cut that are now becoming like collaborations,
Mhm.
which is really really cool. I'm super
Yeah, that's
excited about some
sick.
of the collaborations I have coming up. um After dropping this, a lot of really cool people reached out to me, so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's another thing I was gonna ask. Well, oh,
Yeah.
continue, but I'll
Well,
ask after.
yeah, just there's this one track that I'm super excited about where it had this really strong idea that I created, and I was really stoked about this guitar riff and this melody I created, and the verses were really coming together. And man, I just like could not figure out what the chorus was. Like I could not come up with a hook. I could not come up with a second, like just this B part, and nothing that I came up with felt as strong as this first part I had created. And then I had this group reach out to me, and I don't want to like give. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah, don't say
it's
too much.
obnoxious to bring it up and not be able to say, but what's cool about these collaborations that I have coming up is that um, when I hit roadblocks, it's really nice to have someone who's like, oh, I hear where this can go, um, because that's like a collaboration is such a beautiful way to get over writer's block, because it like
It's like
forces
a
you
whole
out of
new
your own
world
head.
meshing with
Right.
yours. Yeah,
Right. It's like, yeah, I mean, two brains better than one, of course. And so it's
a
like
whole new
getting to
perspective on the
hear
song.
someone else's ideas and see where they want to take it. Then it's like, oh, we can just keep building off each other. Yeah. And also like the fact that everyone's pivoted to Zoom, like what we're doing right now. And
Right.
it is really kind of cool. I've had a couple different Zoom songwriting sessions with artists, and
Oh, that's awesome.
just like it's awesome that these collaborations that I probably would have never had with people who like probably didn't want to like buy studio time to share with me, or
Right.
like people that like were not even in the same country or the same city.
But they can hop
Would
on a
be
Zoom and it's easy as ever. Yeah.
right. And these are collaborations that like would never, well, realistically, it would have been like we're DMing or texting, and it's like, yeah, like we should collab sometime.
Yeah.
End of story. And now it's
Yeah.
like, well, can you hop on a Zoom call later today? And that's way better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That has made a like even like especially for my podcast too, like I started this podcast like in March, like right when things got shut down pretty much
Yeah.
and everyone was sent home from school. I was like, I just knew that like I had like some like talent in like video editing and stuff like that. Hold on.
You're good.
Yeah, so like I was saying like I started my podcast too like right around the beginning of the quarantine and just like having like the ability to like just zoom people and like reach out to people that I normally like wouldn't be able to like just have sit down for a podcast, be able to do that is like so helpful, like
Yeah, it's
really
huge.
good. And all right, so the EP is called All I Am Is All I Hear. What is the like significance behind that title? Like how did you come up with that name?
Yeah. I when I started working on it sort of in March, I came up with that idea. And it sort of guided me through the process in a really cool way. I don't really think of it as like a conceptual EP or like a concept album or project, but
Right.
I think in a lot of ways, um, it's nice to have sort of like a guiding mantra, and that was sort of what it was for me.
Hmm.
And the way I sort of interpret that is like I spend just as much time as I'm making music on like listening to music. And I find that whatever I'm listening to influences the music I make just so monumentally.
Hmm.
And I'm constantly trying to emulate and just like mirror and reflect things that I really admire and
Hmm.
and styles that I'm really into at the time. And it was like a really scary realization that like wow, like I can be so influenced by whatever I'm listening to,
Right.
sort of in the way where like I remember in high school at one point where I was like, whoa, like whoever I'm hanging out with in a certain week, like I'll start dressing like them or like I'll start like talking like them. And I remember like at one point, like my mom was like, you started like saying like you started like speaking in a certain way or like you've started like dressing in a certain way. And it's like she would be able to like identify like the friends I was hanging out with most
Oh,
that
that's
week
so
or
interesting.
that month.
That
And
is true though.
it's like a very real subtle thing that like I think probably only the people close to you realize. Um, but it was a wild realization that really whatever I'm listening to has so much tremendous power to influence the type of music I'm making.
Hmm.
And your dog is really asserting the dominance over you
Yeah, he
right
really is right now.
now.
He's standing over me.
But yeah, man. So I don't know. I struggle a lot with like the whole concept of originality, as I know like a lot of artists do, and um,
Yep.
and school makes that more difficult because it's tough to not feel like you're just being taught to like emulate great artists before you, and whether it's film or painting or music,
Right.
it's tough to feel like you're being taught to be your own artist versus you're being taught to like emulate these good qualities of historical artists. But I think that I really leaned into the idea that all I am is all I hear. And I really found that once I like acknowledged that, and once I acknowledged that, like, and it's not just music too. What's I think all I am is all I hear. Like my intention behind that was also like, the things that my friends and my family say, like the things that my teachers say, like
Right.
on my computer desktop, I like kind of obsessively keep like sticky notes and I
Hmm.
have like quotations. Like I have a shit ton of to-do lists and
Hmm.
like all sort of random things like song lyrics, chord progressions, but also like I've been keeping a lot of quotations and I had a really quotable art teacher who taught a painting class I was in, and he would just like always drop these just like bombs of wisdom and knowledge that were like sometimes his own and most of the time quoted, but
Hmm.
just from various sources, like old movies or philosophers.
Right.
And so
That's
I would
awesome.
like find myself going back to those for inspiration.
Hmm.
And yeah, and there's a lot on this project that I think is very like um, just derived from other sources. But I think like acknowledging that takes a lot of the pressure of the originality thing off. And I think then what makes artists is that, or what makes artists like distinct from one another is just like our distinct and individual combination of
Right.
influences. I mean, it's like we both might listen to the same music, but we don't listen to all the same music.
Right.
And I'm sure
And
that like
you may
we
interpret like lyrics differently than someone else would.
well, that
Like,
too,
yeah.
totally. Yeah. And it's cool because like at the end of the day, it's like we totally probably have similar taste, me and you.
Hmm.
But I guarantee there's also music that if we dug deep enough, like I love and you hate, or vice versa.
Right. Or
And
I
so I
just
think
haven't heard
that's
yet.
or that too. I mean,
Yeah.
chances are there's a lot of that too. And so
Yeah.
that's super cool. And that's definitely sort of the inspiration behind the name of the project.
Yeah. And you could really go down
Mythology.
like a rabbit hole almost of like discovering new artists too. Like as soon as you like open up to like a new genre or something, you just
Totally.
get, yeah, you just get like overwhelmed by like the
Yeah,
amount of music that you're missing out on. Like,
absolutely.
um
Yeah.
so since you dropped, you said that like more people have been reaching out to you and stuff. Like what, like since you released the project, like how has like how has things changed for you like since then, like as far as like collaboratively or like
Yeah.
recognition or anything like that, like what or
Yeah.
like your mindset almost based on like looking at your own music and like how you see yourself, like how has things changed for you since you released?
Yeah. Um, well, like mentally and emotionally, it's been really interesting. Like sharing a body of work for the first time, really like scared the hell out of me.
Hmm.
And I think there's something like really visceral about that experience of like making something in solidarity and like just like in my bedroom alone late at night, just like grinding away at these songs.
Yeah.
And then boom, like now they're public, like SoundCloud, Spotify, like anyone can listen to these and anyone can feel any sort of way about them. And so I'm like definitely feeling very, very grateful that the response has been really positive.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of this work. But at the same time, like pride trips me up because it's like it's not there's not like it's not like I have anything to really be proud of. It's just like sort
No,
of
you do though. You
I
put a lot of
hurry.
hard work into that. This thing took you like what, 9 months to create?
Yeah, yeah,
9 months going
yeah,
into what ended up being a 5 song project. Like that's so much work to be put in. Like you should definitely be proud of everything that you just made.
yeah. I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
really do. It's definitely a yeah. Pride is an emotion that trips me up,
Yeah.
um, because I think it is really addictive, and I think that it can lead to really
Yeah,
dark
that's true.
paths. And I think a lot about I think a lot about Chance the Rapper, actually,
Really.
funny
Yeah,
enough,
go into that.
who I watched this YouTube like video essay on him that really I think sort of pinned my like the feelings that a lot of us are feeling about him. I sort of assume you're a fan, knowing the rest of your taste, sort of.
Yeah, like yeah, maybe not the big day as much, but
Right, exactly. So that's exactly what I'm about to get into is like
yeah.
I think what's scary about Pride is like you look at the story of Chance the Rapper, which honestly just lives rent free in my head thinking about him. And like this dude like was our age, dropped a project in high school. He was younger actually, and it like randomly blew up on the internet.
Right.
And then he dropped another one, right? So like 10-day acid rap. These were both huge, and dropped another one, right? Like each one bigger than the last,
I think
gaining
Coloring Book is when
hype.
I
And
really
Coloring
got
Book,
into him.
right? Me too.
Yeah.
I'd been into acid rap, but then Coloring Book was like I remember seeing him on tour. I remember like
Yeah, it was like a whole
seeing his
different
merch.
type of rap artist that I've never like seen.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Like,
he was huge. I mean, he was on every
yeah,
talk show. He was on SNL,
literally.
and
I think he won
uh,
the Grammy
oh,
for
he totally
Coloring
right.
Book. Yeah.
Won the Grammy, and he's working with Kanye. He's working with everyone in
Yeah.
the industry.
Exactly.
Um, and honestly, I'm just regurgitating a lot of this really cool YouTube essay that I saw.
Hmm.
Go check out Volksgeist is the
Oh yeah, I've
guy.
seen that. Yeah, I've seen
Um,
them. They have
but
cool
yeah,
videos.
and
Yeah.
then he drops this project that none of us really liked,
Right.
and it was a flop on all just by all standards. Like canceled the tour because he couldn't sell out any of the stadiums, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. But then like fast forward and a couple months ago we found out that like his manager was suing him, and we learned the story about why the big day was the way it was. And it's like he got so prideful, and he had built up this like phenomenal 3 mixtape discography, and he was
Right.
like the man, like he was like the like most
Like
beloved
people were
rapper,
really excited for him to finally drop, and then we're so
right?
let down. Yeah.
And then finds out, like, and then information that we get from behind the scenes from his manager is like he got so prideful and he was on top of the world, and he got really, really ambitious with a project that like he like didn't give enough attention to, and
Right.
ended up like freestyling this whole project and half-assing it all the way. And anyway,
That's
my point
crazy.
is,
Yeah.
like, I think pride can get scary. And I am definitely proud of this work, but and I'm glad that it's done as it's done, and it's really
Right.
humbling. But I'm definitely just excited to keep making music, and just keep putting stuff out, and keep putting out like different stuff, and taking more risks with sound. And
Hmm. So,
yeah.
what is your creative process like? Like, are you making beats first? Are you coming up with like a concept for a song? Do you have lyrics written down first, and then you try to find some where they fit? Like, how does that work for you? How does everything fit in?
I think I'm still figuring that out.
Hmm.
Um, it all of those things that you just said have happened at some point.
Hmm.
Um, I don't tend to make beats in the traditional sense. I work primarily, like on that EP, for example. Um, I'm playing every instrument.
Right.
So I don't really work with samples, frankly, because I'm really bad at figuring out the sampler in Logic, which is the
Hmm.
the digital audio workstation I'm in.
Right.
And I've only since dropping that EP like really dug into it, and sort of I'm sort of figuring it out. And sampling, of course, like comes with its own set of like legality issues with like clearing samples and stuff,
Exactly.
which
Yeah.
as a smaller artist isn't as scary, but definitely like it's a nice thing to not have to worry about.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't make beats in the traditional sense, but sometimes I will start with like a little 4-bar loop of a melody or a chord progression,
Right.
or a phrase. Um, I'm really just big on like writing things down. I have just like a ridiculous amount of just notebooks lying around, because I like compulsively just like write down like anything from like a chord progression or a melody that comes to my head. I keep a lot of voice memos,
Right.
but I've leaned away from voice memos a lot, because I find that they just get really like overwhelming, and I just like
Hmm.
have this long amount of voice memos. And I know a lot of artists use voice memos, um, and a lot of artists I look up to like talk about how their entire creative process just starts from their phone and voice memos and the notes app. But I really am trying more and more to get away from my phone when I'm making
Right.
music. And so yeah, notebooks. And so yeah, sometimes it starts with lyrics, sometimes it starts with melody, chords. Sometimes it's just like a groove. Um, but it definitely most of the time starts with me, um, playing guitar or bass or keys, and like coming up with one thing that sounds cool and building from there.
Exactly. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So how do you fit like making music into your schedule? Is that like what's your like
That's the
day looking
question.
like?
Um, that is the question. I'm again like another thing I'm trying to dial in still. And as like a college student, that is also really difficult.
Right.
And as an online college student, that is especially difficult,
Yeah.
because if I want to like spend the time I want to spend making music at my desk, and I also have a full day of Zoom classes, it's like, well, then I walk outside and I'm like, oh, I haven't seen sunlight in 10 hours. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't gotten away from my laptop for the entire day because it's classes and it's music.
Right. So
So
it's like trying to find that balance between
yeah,
like
I'm really trying to
obviously
figure that out
yeah.
still.
Yeah, that makes a lot yeah, that makes sense. That could be very difficult too because you just don't want to be too like you said, like you don't want to like make those two things your entire life either. So,
Yeah, it's tough. So I'm looking forward to fusing my academics and my music more,
right.
in the coming year. And hopefully that'll make it a little easier to divide my time, because
Mhm.
hopefully it'll be, the things I'm learning will be beneficial to my music, and the music I'm making will be beneficial to my education, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera.
Yeah, definitely.
But right now it's tough, and I find that I have to be really intentional with setting aside time, and like letting my roommates and my friends know that like, hey, like I'm gonna take a couple hours to just be alone and like hunker down and work on some music.
Right.
um And yeah, just definitely like putting the phone away is the hardest part. And like
Um,
turning the laptop on do not disturb.
yeah. So one of the things that stood out to me right away is the cover for this EP. Where did that like who is this artist and how did you
Yeah.
connect with them and like work with them to
Yeah.
create something like this colorful and it's just so interesting to look at too. Like every time I look at it, I see more things in it that
Yeah.
are
The answer won't surprise you. The answer is Twitter. The
yeah.
answer is this dude Sinclair. He is a artist also out of Chicago, which I don't think I realized when I first like started messaging with him.
Hmm.
But I've been a fan of his work for a while. And I like reached out to him a year ago, like back in March, I think, when I started and realized what this was going to be. And I was like,
Hmm.
well, it would be cool to have some cover art to like guide my process. And so I told him the concept for All I Am Is All I Hear. And it was a little bit different back then, but it was still the same core like thesis of the
Right.
idea. And he really took the concept to a really beautiful visual place. So yeah, I can't thank him enough
Hmm.
for like lending the visual aspect to this project. He's really fantastic. Go check out his work. I think his Twitter username is C Sinclair Art. So
Awesome.
he's really awesome.
Yeah, that cover came out so nice.
I agree, man. Oh, the one thing I was gonna say is yeah.
Mhm.
So the other thing about the concept of this that he captured so beautifully is that the majority of my creative process occurs in like the irresponsibly late hours of the night.
Mhm.
I am someone who unfortunately like ends up being really really productive like in those really like wee late hours of the night.
Yeah, me too. I feel like
um
my best ideas come when I just like
yeah,
am just like like
yeah,
yeah,
no,
just
totally.
rebelling against sleep pretty much.
I heard someone talking about it. I wish I could remember where. And they're like, I find that the best ideas come when I'm not sleeping and not fully sleeping and not fully awake, because like you're not awake enough for your brain to like tell you that idea sucks, and you're
Right.
not awake enough for your brain to be like you should rethink that. It's just like a flow state, and I definitely get into that, like definitely hours of like 1 to 6 a.m.
Right.
And so a lot of this like I said, so been through track 3.
It's
um
almost like a time of limbo, like no one
yeah,
is like nothing's really
absolutely.
happening, but like
It's so
you're kind of just
quiet.
in your own head and yeah, like there's so
Yeah,
much that can come out of there.
it's a very like peaceful time, and it also is like it's so dark outside, and like I feel like it really allows me to like tap into darker elements of the art I want to make.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's nice to be able to tap into that. I definitely would love to become a morning person at some point.
Yeah.
And like some producers I really respect on Twitter have been talking about like nothing nicer than like having 8 beats done before noon, or like
Yeah, it's
nothing
like
nicer than like finishing a song before 8 a.m. I'm like, wow, I would love to wake up and have a cup of coffee and like be able to be productive. But I don't know, for some
I feel
reason
like the energy is just not there for me to be able to like
yeah,
really just get into something that early.
yeah.
Like I gotta
And like
almost like warm up and get to that point.
in anything, like I find
Yeah.
like I just end up writing all my best essays in the middle of the
Yeah,
night. Like
exactly. Like
all my work
almost
ends
like
up
when you gotta be
happening.
clutch and like crunch time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Like
even
the
when there's
best
not a
things comes
dead
out of pressure for me.
right, me too. And I always thought it was because of a deadline, like with school. But then it's like even when I don't have a deadline for something like a song, like I still will end up sitting down, at midnight or whatever. And
Right.
all like sometimes like I was about to say that track Been Through
Mhm.
um was done in like only a couple sittings. Um it was I probably did that song in like I think I wrote the majority of it in one sitting. And it was like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Wow.
Just like one sitting, like probably just getting up to like get water
Yeah. And then
and
watching the
like
sun come up.
yeah, and then like going to bed as like the birds chirp, and it's
Yeah.
like I get this like really gnarly feeling in my stomach when I hear the birds chirp as I'm going to sleep, and it's like it's like my body being like, you're not supposed to be awake right now.
No,
Like you're not supposed
seriously.
to be falling asleep right
And
now.
they're
Like,
so much louder at that time of the day too for some
oh my god,
reason.
no, it's brutal. And I have gotten really bad at getting used to it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you say that your music taste has changed over time? And the next question, I don't know, I'll give you like two for one right
Yeah.
here, so you can just kind of
Yeah,
like
please.
flow into the next one. Like who are your biggest influences, favorite artists, stuff like that?
Yeah. Um, the crazy thing I've noticed happening with my music taste is that in a lot of ways, it's sort of gone on like a bell curve of like a lot of the stuff that I listened to when I was a lot younger has come back to be really, really impactful
Hmm.
now. And a lot of the stuff actually that I was sort of resistant to when I was younger, like the stuff that my parents really vibed with and played me, um, like that I really, really was not a fan of at the moment, like has now really come back to be really important to me.
Right.
So yeah, a lot. So okay, so biggest influences, right? Like if we're, ooh, which is always a hard question. Um, but
You could take a few. You don't have to
yeah,
put it on just
yeah.
like one or two. Yeah.
Paul McCartney, George Harrison, their solo work as well as the Beatles, of course.
Right.
Huge. Like I am just the biggest Beatles nerd of all time. Um, and then like Stevie Wonder, grew up on a lot of Stevie Wonder.
Hmm.
Um, and I think a lot of their so like Paul McCartney, I definitely find like seeping into my music sometimes. And then Stevie Wonder, particularly his album Talking Book, which is sort of not as talked about as Songs in the Key of Life or
Right.
Inner Visions.
Right.
But Talking Book is definitely an album that I go back to a lot. Particularly You and I, really gorgeous song, some really cool early like Moog synth work. Check that one out.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check that one out.
Um, yeah, Talking Book is a great album. And then so like I was saying, like when I was younger, some of the stuff my parents played me, like um Simon and Garfunkel,
Hmm.
huge. Like just their harmonies really, really, really inspiring.
Right.
And I think on this EP a lot, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Like I think vocal harmonies will be a huge part of everything I do. Like I'm obsessed with just like sitting at my desk and recording, 50, 60 vocal takes and creating these lush, like I was also just like a total choir nerd in high school.
Hmm.
And so that part of me is still like very, very, very vibrant. And so Paul Simon, his solo stuff, his stuff with Simon and Garfunkel, um, Bob Dylan, was really not a fan of when I was younger. My parents would play him and I was like, this dude can't sing. And now it's like a couple years ago, it just clicked in like a very big way.
It's almost um like when I like I don't know, like when I was showing my mom, I think it was Mac Miller's Tiny Desk concert. She was like, it was right after we watched like a Harry Styles one. I was just kind of showing her stuff, and she was like, "Do you think Mac has a good voice?" And I'm like,
Dude,
"Not necessarily, but there's so much emotion and like intention between like in everything he's doing that just makes it sound so nice and so genuine, and I just love it so
I
much."
have made with my parents actually, I have made the Bob Dylan Mac Miller comparison a number of times. Like that is so
Yeah.
funny you say that because
Yeah.
that is a really real comparison to me where it's like the most soulful, like pouring their heart out, especially in
Yes.
Mac's like, last three,
Yeah.
four
And
albums.
the evolution of his discography is
Absolutely,
crazy.
absolutely. Yeah, I could
Like
talk about
basically
him
like
all day.
frat boy rap, and then ends
Totally.
up being like
Yeah.
dropping
Oh my
something
God. I mean,
like
yeah, he's so near and dear to my heart. Like I feel
yeah,
like I grew up with him in a really cool way.
yeah,
And I remember exactly like where I was when I heard that he died and was
yeah,
just crushed.
yeah,
And then of course we were like so blessed with that posthumous album. But
yes. Which
yeah,
I was kind of scared about because sometimes those don't always go the right way, especially when
I was pissed to hear that they were gonna release a posthumous album.
yeah. But it
But
ended up
wow,
being it seemed like
it's
something very
special.
genuine that
Yeah,
like was pretty much like almost done or something.
handled the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so back to Bob Dylan though.
Hmm.
Like I find him to just be one of the most compelling songwriters. And he really inspires me because I find myself like watching a lot of old videos of him performing at like old folk festivals. And just the fact that like a dude with a guitar and a harmonica can make music that is then respected by like the biggest names in the world. And
Right.
like the fact that the Beatles wanted to be Bob Dylan and Bob Dylan wanted to be the Beatles and like he wasn't doing much. Like the dude really like the jokes about his voice are like pretty warranted. Like the jokes about like, that nasal affectation that he does. It's like, yeah, it's Bob Dylan, but also his songs like strike something that very few other artists do. And folk music definitely played a big part in shaping this EP.
Mhm.
Diving into some folk stuff. I'm a really big fan of folk music, and I really was not when I was younger
Mhm.
because I thought it was too simple and boring. And it's like there's four chords over and over again, and they're just like telling stories. It's like that's so boring. Where's the bass? And I was
Yeah.
just like just so naive about that. But I definitely have come around on that. And yeah, like newer stuff. This past year, I'm like looking over at my record collection and looking through like what I've been listening to a lot of. Uh Parcels has been a band that I've been obsessed
Okay.
with lately. They're out of Australia, I want to say. They're fantastic. They sort of
Mhm.
have like a Bee Gees, Beach Boys, Beatles mixed with Daft Punk
Oh, like
and
a Tame
like
Impala type sound almost?
sort of like maybe some like more poppy or Tame Impala stuff. Like on this
Yeah.
latest album, there's definitely some
Yeah.
crossover.
Okay.
Yeah, but like very like disco,
That's
um,
awesome. Yeah, I love Daft Punk
really
and stuff
sick
like
stuff.
that. I'm gonna have
So
to listen to those.
Parcels, their live album's great and their self-titled album. They only have two albums out.
Mhm.
Um, they've been huge. I'm really into this band, the Marias. Um,
Okay.
Sort of like some low key indie pop.
Mhm.
I've been getting really into the Beths. Um, the Marias and the Beths, like both named after the lead singer. But the Beths is this like really cool indie pop rock out of New Zealand. Um, yeah, but then also like hip hop continues to be a big part. Mac
Yep.
Miller, Tyler the Creator is obviously doing phenomenal things.
Right.
I'm really into Tierra Whack. She really
Okay. Yeah.
inspires
I've
me.
heard yeah.
Yeah, she's
I've heard
super,
some of
super
her
cool.
songs.
Yeah, I got to meet her when she played in Chicago. I
Oh,
like
that's sick.
obsessively like waited outside her venue with my friends and I was like, "Oh my god, like you're so awesome." And, like she rolled down her window as she was leaving in the car and like was just the sweetest person ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so Injury Reserve, big fan of them. Really upsetting to hear that one of the members died this
Oh
summer.
yeah.
And so I've been going back to their music a lot. Um, R&B, Frank Ocean, Daniel Caesar, Sampha, um, just like there's so much good stuff,
Yeah,
and I
it's
find
crazy.
that it all creeps its way um into whatever I'm doing. Um, Father John Misty is someone I've gotten into this past year. Um, Kanye continues to I
Yeah.
just can't ever stop going back to
Yeah,
him.
me too.
And the cool thing I find about Kanye is that like week by week, my favorite album changes, and
Yeah,
um,
that's something I deal with all the time. Usually it's
yeah,
between Yeezus and The Life of Pablo, but then like I'll listen to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy for like a 2 week span and I'm like, this is the
yeah,
greatest album of all time. And then I'm
yeah.
like, well,
I,
maybe not. Maybe it's this.
I've been really really on an 808s and Heartbreaks
Oh,
binge.
808s is so good.
And I think that there's a little bit of that creeps into the last song on this EP,
Mhm.
with sort of the vocal synthesizers that I was really into. Um, yeah, there's a lot of Anderson .Paak is someone who I'm really, really,
Oh,
really
his sound
into.
is so nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super, super into him. And yeah, I mean, man, I could just like
Yeah, just
tell
keep
you
rattling
artists all
off
day,
artists all day.
but really, it's like there's a lot of. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's the Beatles, it's Stevie Wonder. Oh, it's John Mayer, another one.
Yep.
Um, but it's really like a lot of Beatles, like a lot of the Beatles. I
And
will
they
like
have so
just
much music that you could just keep going back to, and like every time I
yeah,
listen
man,
to something new by the like something like from the Beatles, like it's like new to me because it's not something I listen to
yeah,
all the time, but it's like they
yeah.
have so much. It's
They
like
have so much, and what's cool is they work on so many levels. Like
yeah,
obviously they have like their like Hey Jude, Yellow Submarine, like really poppy, like silly
yeah. And then
mainstream
there's stuff on
appeal
like
stuff.
Sergeant Pepper's, and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the crazy thing is like I loved those songs when I was a kid. Like Sergeant Pepper was my album as a kid. Like,
right,
but now I go back to it and I'm like, whoa, like they were doing some insane like
yeah,
sampling. They were doing some insane like tape looping and like playing their parts in reverse. And they were doing some things that were so ambitious and so before anyone else. Maybe not before anyone else, but before anyone else as big as them.
right. Kind of
Revolver is an
popularizing
album.
that sound. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Revolver, particularly the song Tomorrow Never Knows is a song that I've been like going back to again and again. It's just like, wow, the Beatles had a lot going on. And obviously I'm not the first or the last to sing their praises, but um it's definitely they continue to be a band that I go back to and back to again.
yep. Do you remember when you made like your first song ever and what that was like? Or was it like so like far back in your childhood like it's not something like I know Like, was this something that you
Yeah.
made and you were like hated
I
right
r-
away or like loved it and like
I think I've always thought that I could write songs, and I think that I never finished a lot of them.
mhm,
But I remember I sang a song at like my 8th grade graduation ceremony for like the
mhm.
class, and I was like really proud of that one. And I don't even think about that very often, but now that I'm thinking back, like that was the first moment I feel like I played and
Was that the
shared a
first
song.
time you like well, no, because you said you were a choir kid growing up too, right? So like
Not until high school, actually.
oh, okay. So like what is it like performing for you? Like obviously like now that's not really something that you could do that much because
Yeah.
of all the
Well,
limitations
it's
with the pandemic.
changed.
But like yeah.
It's changed a lot. And yeah, the pandemic is. I did a Zoom concert last summer that was like a really interesting, fun experience.
Mhm.
I've done a couple of those. Like I appeared in one for like the old vocal studio I was at, and anyway, but um, performing is something that I used to really, really love, and now I still love. But I think in the last couple of years, I've like dealt with some social anxiety that's crept up on me.
Right,
Like
yeah.
last 4 or 5 years, just like becoming an adult, whatever that means.
Right.
And I find that performing is really, I still really enjoy performing, but the parts leading up to performing, like, just scare the crap out of me. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely like am not a fan of like all the build up. If I could just like pop on stage, play an hour long set, and then pop off, and like no one ever knew that I was gonna be playing, and no one ever, I never had to hear what anyone thought of the set. Like that would be awesome.
Right.
But like I even get anxiety about like getting off stage and like people coming up to me and being like, "Oh, that was awesome," or that was great. Like I'm so glad I came to the show. Like even that, I was just like, "Oh, like thank
Yeah,
you."
it could
Like
be scary. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like I don't know. I'm still learning how to like take compliments, and like even
Right.
after dropping the CP, it's like it's like a very good exercise in I don't know. I don't it's in humility in
Right.
everything that I'm
Like we
working on, and
said,
like
like
yeah,
trying to like balance like controlling the ego almost like it
absolutely.
could be tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I really appreciate when people enjoy something and want to tell me.
Right.
And obviously it's like when I make a song start to finish by myself, it's like really cool that someone digs it, and it's really especially cool when like someone I admire or an artist I look up to digs it. But it's also like, whoa, it's like I don't know. A lot of times I feel like I'm not entirely to thank. Like, and
Right.
that's also goes back to like the all I am is all I hear. It's like sometimes I feel like
Almost like
the source
imposter
of these
syndrome
things, like,
almost,
oh,
right?
big time imposter
Yeah.
syndrome. Yeah, and I sometimes I feel like it's coming from another source. Like sometimes I feel like the me who's promoting my music isn't the same me who's making my music.
Right.
Um,
Because you almost
and
have to like change your mindset completely, like from
completely.
going like so introspective, like while making your art, and then when it comes to promoting it, it's almost like you got to turn that inside out and like,
Oh, and it's
all
all
right,
a
guys, now
game.
listen to me, which
Yeah,
is yeah,
it's all a stupid game. Like anyone I think who's ever had to promote themselves knows it's like it's almost really humiliating to be
yeah.
like,
Like even like when I like, especially in the beginning, like now I'm kind of like used to it. But like when I first started my podcast and I started promoting that, I'm like, I hope all my friends, like all my hometown friends, are not just like, oh, here's the podcast kid now, or like he thinks he's this. Like I'm
absolutely,
trying
yeah.
something which I'm passionate about in the moment, and then as soon as I have to like tell people about it, like, oh, like I want to do like podcasting or like I want to be a YouTuber, I feel like such like
Oh,
I
the
don't know,
imposter
like
syndrome's so
yes,
real.
where I'm like, should I even
And
be like promoting this? Like I know I should, so I
absolutely.
do,
No,
but
yeah, we're on the same page with that.
yeah,
And then I think I just have to remind myself it's like I made this, and if I want people to hear it, like I might have to post it
tell them.
on social media. Like I
Yeah,
have to tell people, and like if I want a lot of people to hear it, like I might have to like do like real advertising, or like make a
yeah,
meme, or like do whatever it takes to like
right.
get this to people's ears. And
And
usually it's
just
worth it,
to
but
be
it's
able to follow your dream, exactly.
yeah, but it's like
Yeah,
there's definitely a part of me that's like it's like super humiliating to like
yeah,
sell yourself.
yeah,
Um and it's like a really weird thing that I think it's the one reason why I understand why like independent artists sign with labels. It's like it would be lovely for someone to handle
right.
all of this, and like um but yeah, but the creative freedom is probably not something I'm willing to
Exactly.
sacrifice
Yeah,
anytime soon.
exactly. Yeah, that's something that I think I would try to stay independent too as long as I could. If
Yeah.
like
Yeah, it's
especially where you
scary.
can see like we said with Chance the Rapper, like the fact that he like stuck with that kind of like opened up a lot of lanes for
Absolutely.
people trying to do the
Yeah.
same thing too. Because he was like the
Yeah.
first one, I think, maybe not the first one, I don't know, but like to make it at like such a huge level where he's collaborating with all these big artists and winning these awards, and he's like not signed to anyone.
No, totally. I think at some point I think actually for this next project that I'm hoping to put out, I'll end up outsourcing more. So for context, like this first project, All I Am Is All I Hear, I recorded, produced, et cetera, mixed it all myself, and then um, actually sent it off to be mastered at a studio in Portland.
Mhm.
Jason Powers, really awesome engineer, um, and he handled that because I was sort of in over my head with the mastering thing,
Right.
which is a process that I think a lot of musicians don't even understand, and
Right. Yeah.
I can only sort of scratch the surface, and
Exactly.
um,
Yeah. It seems like
I've mastered a couple songs,
an
and
art in
like
itself.
yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm along every step of the way not sure if I'm doing it right. Um, so I think I'll also look to hopefully outsource other things in the future. Like it would be nice to outsource some production, outsource some mixing, so that I can just focus on the songwriting and
Right.
like the creative parts of it. Not that it's not creative, but like I
The
I
parts
mean
that
the
mean the most
creative,
to you.
yeah, and the creative in like the real sense of like creating the music
Right.
versus like the tuning and the fine tuning and the
The
mixing.
technicalities of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so the engineering is really what I should say.
Right.
I'm looking to outsource that at some point, but I'm glad that I did it this time so that I like know how to do it and I can do it
Exactly.
for other artists. And I've gotten a little into producing some of my friends' music, and that's been really lovely. And I'm looking to do more of that because that's really nice too because it allows you to hone that skill without being so attached to the music. Like producing other people's music is a really wild time because you get to I don't know I feel less scared to like take risks
Mhm.
um and I'm not like all caught up in like, oh well, I could have sang that better, I should go back before I mix it, and it's just like, oh well, like this is the song, like they killed it. Also, like you're your own biggest critic, so like if I'm listening to someone
Exactly.
else's vocals versus my own vocals, like I'm not going to hear any of the things that they maybe think they did wrong. And
Right.
like just as if I sent you like my raw vocal stems, like you
No,
probably wouldn't
literally, the
notice
amount of
anything I
times like
notice.
friends of mine that make music, they'll send me stuff. I'm like, this is awesome. They're like, no, like really be honest though. Like, what do you think? And I'm like,
Yeah,
no, I really think it sounds good. And they're
yeah,
like, no, like be my biggest critic right now. And it's like it's so
yeah.
hard for me to like find something because I don't know what their best work is or
Yeah.
worst work is or what their like it's
And
like
even
hard to kind of
and
analyze
even my
it.
musician friends, like I'm really lucky to like have a really cool community of
Hmm.
musicians around me. And even some of them like they'll have critiques and which is really cool, but like there's levels. I mean, it's like there's the untrained ear, which is like might not hear some of the things. And
Right.
so you have to like cater your productions to people who, aren't musicians but still really love listening to your music. But then it's also like you're also wanting to make sure that like I don't want my friends who produce music to like listen to my music and be like, oh, like he produced this poorly or he mixed this
Yeah.
poorly. Like,
Yeah. 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 That makes a lot of sense.
but then at the end of the day, like a lot of things that I think sound crappy, like even my friends who are, or even like career musicians who have checked out my music, like probably might not even notice. It's probably just things that I wish I did better. But again, like if it's my song and the first version that anyone's hearing is mine because I'm writing it and producing it, it's like there's no expectations versus like covers where it's like, or if you're like recreating something, which I don't know
Hmm.
why you would, but a cover, there's like expectations because there's something you're,
Right.
marking it up against. But
Right.
no, it's nice to be able to do,
And
to be able to put
I
out
love
music.
seeing your covers on Twitter. Those are always like
Thank you.
I love
Yeah,
seeing those.
I enjoy doing those. They're also like secretly sort of good promo.
Hmm.
I like they're the main promo that I don't hate doing.
Especially
Because
because
it's
it's
like
something that people like already know and can relate to. So when they
right,
see like your little spin on it, they're like
right.
introduced to you and your voice and your
Right. If you're a
style. And
Mac
then
Miller fan, but you're not a
right,
Samuel Aaron fan, and I release a Mac Miller cover, you're way more likely to check that out
right,
than my own
exactly.
music.
So yeah, that's really good. I love that marketing like aspect to it, and just like you it seems like you're only covering things that you like genuinely enjoy and love. So
Yeah,
that
I've
is
I have a
like
lot of I have plenty more covers recorded that I'd love to release at some point.
that's awesome.
In the right ways, but it's really fun. I mean, I'm constantly just like playing through songs that I love.
Hmm.
I'll just like listen to a song and like play along by ear. I'll pull up chords that I find online and
Right.
just like sort of jam through. And I find that I also learn a lot about songwriting by like breaking down the progressions of songs that I like and the structures. And so that's been really helpful too. But then it's just really fun to record covers of songs I love.
Yeah.
And I'll
Um.
definitely incorporate some of those into like live sets when I can perform shows again.
Yeah, and that'd be awesome. So one more thing before we close things out, because I
Yeah.
think we've been on for a little over an hour or something.
Yeah, totally. I know, time's flying by.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start making music?
Oh, that's an awesome question. And I'm gonna end up regurgitating like a really like Frankenstein monster amalgamation of things that I've been told probably.
Right.
Um,
And that's fine.
a big one is like try to finish songs. This is the main thing that I struggle with is like just try to finish songs. And like if they're crappy, like you don't have to do anything with them. Like that's the beautiful thing is like
Right.
I would estimate like 70 to 100 completely unfinished songs that no one's ever going to hear, or just like snippets or ideas or
Right.
beats. And it's like, I just wish I finished more of them.
Just
So
for
yeah,
the
finish.
like practice of it, and just
Yeah.
like
And
getting
just
the
like
skills up.
see
Yeah.
where they go.
Right.
Like there's so much potential in every idea. Finish things. And if you don't like them, don't do anything with them. But also like release that song that you're proud of. Like
Right.
if you're proud of something and you're texting it to all your friends and like they all like it, or even if they don't, like if you're proud of something, like share it because there's
Right.
an audience for everything. There's an audience for everything. That's a huge part of it.
Right.
I've been really amazed at like people who are liking my music from all over the world and like just like through Twitter or Reddit,
Right.
just like all over the world, there's people who will like whatever you're doing, whether it's film or comedy or painting.
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be an audience for what you're doing because if you think it's good, you're not alone. Like someone will have the same taste as you.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, finish things, share them. And like that's not just like finish your sharing, like that's not just share your finished products, but like feel free to like sharing works in progress is really cool to me and like really a cool act of like humility and I think sharing finished products or sharing works in progress.
Because I think people kind of appreciate and fall in love with the process just as much as the artist too, especially when they like appreciate the artist. Like
right,
like
we all love like
videos
watching beat videos of like
Yeah.
people like breaking down their things, or like I've gotten really into like watching like Jacob Collier or like the guy
Right.
from Disclosure. Like they all do these sessions and like I feel like you learn so much from watching other people
Right.
go in on
Kenny
their
Beats
craft.
has that show where like people
Yeah.
will come in.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. The Cave. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of that. So yeah, share, finish, and then also like lean into the stuff that you're not sure if it's like if something sounds really good to you, like lean into it
Mhm.
because like I think that's where you find your sound is like these weird textures and combinations. Yeah, like I think that's probably where
Like
a
don't be
lot
afraid
of
to experiment pretty much.
right, like there's so
Yeah.
much music that sounds the same and a lot of it's really good, but I think it's really really exciting when you can find a new combination of things that work.
Right.
And a lot of that comes from things that like maybe sound really gross or disgusting or grimy at first and like I don't know, like a lot
Yeah.
of artists I think
Are kind
have
of afraid to
released
take that
things.
like risk of
Yeah.
a leap when it's literally just trying new stuff, right?
Yeah, and like yeah, and also like time tells all in a really weird way. Like the
Mhm.
fact that so many phenomenal artists have gone down in history for albums that were absolutely roasted when they came out,
Right.
like it just means that they were before their time.
Yeah.
So yeah, finish things, share things, and then also like I think a lot of people struggle with this, but and I really struggle with this. But at the end of the day, like my biggest piece of advice is just remembering that like a good song is just the most valuable thing. Like
Right.
no matter what your gear is, no matter what your setup is, like Bob Dylan
A lot of
with a
people, yeah.
voice and a guitar can make a
Yeah.
better song
Yeah.
than you know the artist that has the nicest studio, most expensive gear, you know, every new synthesizer, the coolest vocal mic. Like a dude on a street corner will like can and will outplay you if his song is better. So like
Right.
I think it's easy to get like in the weeds about production. And you know, like there's this joke in like musicians, it's like having bad gas, like gear acquisition syndrome, where
Mhm.
it's like you just want to like get all this new gear and you think
yeah,
your music will be
upgrade
better.
your mic, upgrade your
Yeah.
software, like all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you think your gear will be better, your music will be better when your gear's better.
Right.
And I get in my head about that. But it's like, no, like at the end of the day, a good song is a good song, whether it's recorded on a MacBook mic or a $1,000 mic. Like a
Right.
good song is a good song.
Yeah. And all right, so we're gonna wrap things up, but where can people listen to your album? Where can they find you on social media?
Yeah. So I am on Twitter at by Samuel Aaron. I'm on Instagram at music by Samuel Aaron. You can check out my music is on all streaming platforms now.
And they can just search Samuel Aaron.
They can just search Samuel Aaron. All I Am Is All I Hear is the name of the EP. It's out. Yeah. SoundCloud, Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple Music.
That's awesome.
I don't know when this is coming out, but we're finishing up a vinyl campaign right now. I'm hoping to get it pressed on vinyl. If that's your thing, go check that out. The campaign is closing on February 5th. Not sure if this comes out after that.
I'll put it up before that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. If it does, if you missed that, I'm hopefully going to try to sell some signed copies on my Bandcamp later. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, bro, it was a pleasure having you on. You can come on anytime when you like, if you want to promote a project, like this is
absolutely.
You have an open
make it a tradition.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. So yeah, thank you so much. And
thank you, man.
Everyone, if you want to like and subscribe and check out him on social media, where he just said, listen to the album, drop a comment if you have anything you want to say. I mean, and yeah, a pleasure, bro. Thank you so much.
Yeah, always a pleasure, man. I'll talk to you soon.
'Cause what I've been through should be more than